voice of the fan. Drop a bounce pass, throw down the rim rocker. Lay up off the glass right past the shot blocker. I follow through like Kobe's is money. You can cash it. For news on LA hoops, come over to thePeachBasket. Up-to-date sports.
Welcome back. We are the Peach Basket, voice of the fan and home of fan experts. We exist to amplify the voice of passionate basketball fans worldwide. Tonight, we continue our preview of the 2021-22 NBA season with the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, this is normally where I would introduce whoever it was that was going to do this preview with me, but unfortunately, it's just me. That's not to say we don't cover the Clippers. We do. Our lead writer for the Clippers last season, Stu, did a phenomenal job consistently covering every game. And our hope is that he joins us again this season, but I don't know. One of the things, that I might get a chance to do tonight that I haven't gotten a chance to do prior, because it's just me, is maybe talk to y'all a little bit about our process. One of the things we like to do is we like to kind of take every season in and of itself. So every season we bring on contributors and we ask them kind of for a 1-year commitment. So we kind of sign them to a 1-year deal and we ask them to, cover that team for that season. We are gathering our team for the 2021-22 season, just like, well, I shouldn't say just like all the NBA teams are. They're done. We're still doing it. So if you're watching this and you're a Clippers fan, please reach out. You should be able to find a link on our website, thepeachbasket.net. Let us know that you have an interest in writing about, covering, talking about the Los Angeles Clippers. And boy, I would love to connect with you. Until then, it's me. I'm going to talk Clippers basketball with you. I am from the LA area. I have covered the Clippers in the past for other sites. I do feel like I know them pretty well. So I'm going to do the best job I can sharing this information with you. We're going to follow the same process we did with our other previews. First off, we're going to talk about who has been added to the Clippers this season. The Clippers are interesting in that they didn't make a lot of big moves. I think most of the big moves might have happened in the Eastern Conference. Not a whole lot of movement in LA. The Clippers really, the success of their offseason wasn't that they brought in, some big names, but rather that they kept their big names. Guys like Reggie Jackson, guys like Nicholas Batum. These guys came back, which, we weren't sure was going to happen. So that's really the big story for the Clippers. They kept their core together. And in this league, that continuity matters. You saw that, the Los Angeles Lakers, kind of didn't do that. You could argue they kept their core, LeBron and AD, but they changed just about everything else. So two different things going on in LA basketball. Who's in for the Lakers? Well, Eric Bledsoe is the big one. He's the biggest name that came in. Former Clippers player, wasn't drafted by them, but played with them his rookie year after trade with the Thunder, who he was originally drafted by. Eric Bledsoe is a solid player. We'll talk a little bit more about him as we go along. I'm only going to talk about kind of the bigger names. There were a few other players that were brought on that I'll leave out, but Eric certainly is the big one. Brandon Boston was drafted. Isaiah Hartenstein, 23, listed as 7 foot. Interestingly, he's listed as a power forward, but he plays kind of like a center. Of course, the center position in today's NBA is not what it used to be. Doesn't necessarily mean if you're a center that you're going to go down low like Kareem used to or Daryl Dawkins used to. You OGs know what I'm talking about. The center position today, plays behind the line, behind the 3-point line. But what's interesting about Hartenstein's game is he does protect the rim. Last season, 17 minutes of play on average for the Cavs. He averaged 1.2 blocks. So this is a guy who can defend. He can score. He actually led the Clippers in scoring in the last preseason game against Dallas. So he's an interesting piece And I think it's interesting that they brought in not only him, but also Harry Giles, another big guy listed just under 7 foot at 6'11", listed as a center, though, odd, center / power forward. Less of a rim protector, but really good offensively. So, we've got kind of a little bottleneck at the center position, but there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about it. The other big addition was Justice Winslow. Justice Winslow came out with some fanfare, never really got to where people thought he should be. Maybe this is a breakout year. We have seen some players that kind of floundered for a year or two and then had a breakout. They might be the year for Justice Winslow. Sometimes, and I was talking to somebody about this, and I can't remember who. I wish I could. I would give him credit. But we were talking about how sometimes it's not the player, but it's the player plus the system, right? The right player in the wrong system isn't going to excel. Right player in the right system is going to excel. And maybe Justice hasn't found the right system yet. And maybe that's what's going to happen in LA. He'll certainly get his time. I think he's going to get a good look, and he should be a regular contributor with some regular, consistent minutes off the bench. Now, every time there's people coming in, there's people leaving. Let me rattle them off to you first, and then we'll talk about them. Patrick Beverley, DeMarcus Cousins, Yogi Ferrell, Patrick Patterson, and Rajon Rondo. Pat Bev is going to hurt. Not because you look at his numbers and you really don't see a whole lot there. I think Clippers fans really know what Patrick Beverley brought to that team. And any team who's had Pat Bev on their team knows what he brings to the team. And anybody who's not had Pat Bev on your team, you know what it's like to hate the guy. He's an intense basketball player. I think he's an energizer, and I think that's what the Clippers are going to miss more than anything. He would come into the game, just lock down somebody and just get pumped up, and it would pump up the crowd, it would pump up the team, and that energy counts for something that matters. And I don't think anybody's going to replace that. You're not going to replace Patrick. You'll replace Patrick Beverley's numbers. You're not going to replace Patrick Beverley's energy. And that could be a problem for the Clippers. DeMarcus Cousins, sad to see how his career likely, has ended. I don't know that it's going to end. He might get picked up again. But this was a guy who was just all world. And then just, injuries happen. It's unfortunate. Yogi Ferrell, I thought, had a really good impact. The few minutes he played last season, I thought that they might keep him. They decided not to. Pat, he's an interesting dude, but the thing about Pat is he would come in and he'd hit a big three, and then another one, and then another one. He was a good streaky shooter. But the Clippers decided not to move on, or I think Patrick decided to move on from the Clippers. Rajon Rondo is tough. I think Clippers fans have a hard time with that because they gave up Lou Williams to get him. And the Clippers rolled the dice there. The money lined up, if I remember correctly, it was $8 million each for Rajon Rondo and Lou Williams. So the salaries counted or matched. Lou Williams kind of got a little torched season prior to last. Defensively, the Clippers knew that going into this season's last season's playoff, they wanted somebody different. They thought Rondo would be it. They wanted playoff Rondo. They did not get playoff Rondo. And so it hurts because they ended up just losing Lou Williams, which is unfortunate. And I think Clipper fans have a hard time with that. But those are the guys that are out. When you look at the people that are out and the people that are in, I think, the Clippers certainly, I don't think got any better, got any worse necessarily. They're where they were last season. And when you look at how close they got to being in the finals, I don't think anybody's going to argue that if Kawhi Leonard wasn't healthy, that the Clippers wouldn't have made it to the finals. I think that's pretty self-evident. But, every team has a what-if story. Every team does. They don't matter because every team has them and injuries happen. But the Clipper team is good. The Clippers team last season was good. This Clipper team is assembled is good. It's just going to see – we're going to have to see how things play out. for injury-wise and everything else. But that's who's in. That's who's out. I think the biggest impact from the people coming in, it's got to be Eric Bledsoe. Eric Bledsoe has to make an impact. He was mentored by CP3 when he was with the Clippers before. He has to really channel CP3 as much as possible for the Clippers this season. He's got to be tough defensively. He's got to shoot good, not great. He's got to shoot good. He's got to hit the big shots when he gets them. He's got to limit his turnovers. What concerns me about Bledsoe is he has been a starter pretty much the entirety of his career. After his first couple of seasons in the league, 99 out of 100 times he started. I think he missed one game. He came off the bench one game last season. Is he going to be okay? Being a bench guy, being the first point guard off the bench is sometimes that messes with your head. I don't know if he's going to be okay with that. I don't have any reason to believe he won't, but that's going to be an interesting concern. If he can accept that, he's going to be, top tier, maybe a mid to top tier point guard coming off the bench for the Clippers, which is going to be really, really, really helpful for that second unit. Of course, Reggie Jackson will likely be the starter. The biggest loss, I mentioned it already, is Pat Bev. Again, not his numbers, but that energy. It'll be really interesting to see if somebody on this team, as constructed, is going to be able to match that energy somehow, some way. So those are the starters, or pardon me, those are the people that are out, the people that are in. Let's talk now about the Clippers ceiling. I've asked everybody this question, right? What's the very best that can happen? The Clippers are interesting because they have a big unknown. Kawhi Leonard is out. There's been some rumbling that, he's ahead of schedule. We hear that all the time. I don't think that it means anything with Kawhi and the Clippers. They were both, kind of famously quiet about things like that. So I don't know that any of that news matters, but we are hearing it. He might come back early. He might not. Who knows? Here's the thing. If Kawhi can come in and play 20 games before the playoffs start, get his legs, get his timing, get into shape, the Clippers are finals favorites. I just don't see how that team with Kawhi, and I'm talking a healthy Kawhi with 20 games under his belt, how that team can't, be a favorite to win the West and play in the finals. They proved it last season, right? They played without Kawhi and they came so close. You add a healthy Kawhi, this team is absolutely dangerous. Without him, and maybe even without those 20 games, they'll be hard pressed, right, to match the Western Conference final appearance. The West is interesting in that it's been tough for a long time. I don't know that it got a lot tougher this season. I think the East got a lot tougher than the West this season. But as far as the ceiling goes, it really depends on Kawhi. And we'll get to that a little bit when I talk about my bold prediction. So concern. Now, this one's interesting. I think it's interesting anyway. You take injuries aside because that's a concern for everybody across the board. But I have a concern about Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard is a phenomenal shooter. He shoots over 40% from three. He's just absolutely incredible. Last season for the Clippers, though, he wasn't consistent. And it was troublesome because the year before that with Detroit, he averaged 15.8 points, almost 16 points a game, and 4 assists. He didn't come close to those numbers. Now, admittedly, with LA, he didn't have the same playing time. He didn't have the same minutes. But you see what's possible for somebody like Luke Kennard. And I think if he starts showing some consistency, he's going to get more minutes. And it's one of those things where, what comes first, right? The chicken or the egg. Am I going to get more minutes, or am I going to earn the minutes? But I need the minutes to show that I can earn them. It's tough, and I get that. But Luke Kennard has to progress. I think he will likely be the first shooting guard off the bench. Him and Eric Bledsoe, if they can connect, if they can play well together, if Luke Kennard can shoot his 40% again and do it with some consistency and come close to those 15 points, that would be huge. A lack of progress from Luke Kennard could be a problem. So it's a concern. And I think Luke Kennard has got to take that step up. And hopefully he does. He seems like a genuinely nice guy and a really good player. So that's who's new. That's who's out. We talked the ceiling, the concern. Now I want to give you a bold prediction. Again, we did this for everybody. I'm gonna hold myself accountable as well. So bold prediction: the West is strong, but like I said before, I don't think it got stronger this season. Really, the East got pretty strong. And I know, a lot of pieces just kind of moved around, but there's some really good teams in the East. Atlanta, I think, proved to themselves that they can be very, very good last season. They were last season what the Suns were 2 seasons ago in the bubble when they went 8-0. Next season, they come back. Of course, they added CP3, but they make it to the finals. I think that's the Atlanta Hawks now. They're good and they know it. Philly's a bit of a mystery. Milwaukee's the defending champs. Boston, we talked to Boston yesterday, and I think they're going to be a solid team. The Heat brought in Kyle Lowry. They're going to be solid. So a lot of the Eastern teams got really, really good. In the West, there wasn't a whole lot of movement. We've got mysteries in the West. I think the Warriors are a mystery. How are they going to do while they hold down the fort until about December when Klay Thompson comes back? They're a mystery. The Lakers, I think, are a bit of a mystery. They brought in some phenomenal players, but, they are a little older, which in and of itself doesn't really matter. To me, I think if you have older players, you have smarter players. Of course, injuries a bigger concern. But how that's all going to mesh together, we just don't know. Oh, and forgive me, I gotta call out. I was talking Lakers, got to call out Chicago, who also got better in the East, in large part because of players like Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball. You can see how I got there after talking Lakers. But the Lakers are a bit of a mystery. The Warriors, I mentioned them. The Nuggets and the Jazz are going to be good because they're good. And I think they're going to be solid. But you look at the West, and I don't really see a dominant team. I think the Lakers are going to struggle a little bit to get that consistency off, from the get-go. The Warriors, I think, are going to struggle a little bit, just kind of like they did last season. They're the same team until they get Klay back. Then it'll be interesting. So I think the teams that are going to really do well are teams like the Nuggets and the Jazz that have been together for a while. I think they'll come out of the gate strong. And the Clippers are in that group. They've got the same core. They know each other. There's no worries about chemistry or gelling. They're going to play well. So my bold prediction, I think the Clippers are going to make it to the Western Conference Final again, 2 seasons in a row, and that's with or without Kawhi. I think this team is strong enough to do that. You bring in Kawhi, then you're looking at a Finals championship or at least an opportunity. The Clippers are flying under the radar this season, and I think that's okay with them. I think they're going to be good this season. Mental note to silence my phone next time I do this. That's the Clippers preview from my perspective. I appreciate your time. Once again, if you are interested in the Clippers, you're watching this, we might have some opportunities for you. Quite honestly, any team. We covered about 15 of the 30 NBA teams last season. We want to cover them all this season, and we're about 3/4 of the way there. If you have an interest, if you are passionate about basketball, if you are the guy or girl that friends come to and ask about, NBA news, you are somebody we want to talk to. We're the Peach Basket. We are voice of the fan, home of fan experts. And we mean this sincerely when we say we exist to amplify the voice of passionate basketball fans worldwide. That's why we're here, to give people like you, people like me, a voice, an opportunity to write basketball, talk basketball, connect around basketball. That's why we exist. That's why we're here. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Next up, I'm not sure. We haven't scheduled anything yet, but we do have the Sixers, we have the Bulls, we have the Hornets, we have the Magic, all on tap for next week. Schedule TBD. Appreciate you taking the time to listen. We'll talk again soon.
Up-to-date sports, post-game reports, debates and play-by-play coming straight off the court. The voice of the fan making noise, causing havoc. Zone a man up, you can ask Peach Basket. The Peach Basket, coming soon on air. The Peach Basket, where the news begins. We're dropping news like we're in the stands. Creative views from the average fan.